Hello, everybody. So, looks like we made it to the end of the semester. Today is the last day of class. 8-week courses go by quickly. Summers have always been 8 weeks long, but in the fall and spring, all the classes are 8 weeks now too. So they're all consistent year round, which is nice. We put a lot of classes in, adjust schedules. Has everybody registered for fall semester? Got some classes today, know what you're gonna do. I see head nods here in the classroom, so hopefully heads nodding on the Zoom calls as well. So we covered all the major course learning objectives already, but with IT, there's still a lot of stuff we can learn beyond that. So I don't like to cancel class. It'll probably be a short class again today. I would go about to what was our normal break time for the class. Just look at a few things, so it'll be useful. A reminder, so we're getting very near the end. Remember, there's the final exam this week, and final exams are on the calendar schedule. So we'll probably wrap up about the time we norm. For most of the stuff, we're taking a break around 2:00, 2:15. So that might be a good time to go ahead and get that exam knocked out. Because it's a calendar schedule. All homework, all past work homework and your final paper and presentation that goes with it, all of that's due Sunday. The exam's due Saturday, so please don't forget about that. Yeah, then Monday morning I'll wake up, finish any grading that remains and get grades submitted. Usually really early. I'm usually finished by 7:30 Monday morning because I wake up early. Well, I thought maybe just go over some things that might be useful as you're heading into your IT careers. Some odds and ends. One thing, maybe machine learning and AI that has popped in my mind. Oh, we never did the chatbot discussion, did we? I forgot to come back and add that. I had intended, so I'll talk about that some today. I intended to do a discussion board with ChatGPT and have go with ChatGPT or one of the other ones, but in general, I have everybody go to the same one or there's some consistency. And put the prompt in there, and obviously that's the point of that sort of discussion board is to evaluate the chatbot, make sure you know how to use it. The way the machine learning works is layers of weighted averages and just percentages. Basically, we give it a huge data set to look at. So the machine will go through and look for patterns. It tries to see if it can find patterns. We end up with sort of a network picture. It looks something like this. So there's some sort of input. I'll just do one again. So we have like a picture or something coming in, picture or word, something coming in. And we split that up into little pieces, kind of have the computer break that up into pieces and look for its own pattern. Remember how we talked about that earlier in the semester? The physical level, it's really just, we forced the human pattern onto a series of switches. The way we represent binary numerical representation. We put that into a binary switches, so it's a human pattern. The difference here is the big difference with AI, and the I part's not really true at all. There's no intelligence in it. The big difference is we let the computer pick its own pattern. So for example, to recognize the number 4, one of the most basic introductions to machine learning is we're learning to read written numbers. For some reason, to recognize the number 4, we have a picture of it. The computer needs to see a bunch of it looks to me like a bunch of overlapping 7s. It looks something like that. For some reason, that is one of the most important things for the computer patterns for the computer to recognize in order to recognize a 4. Or a 4 like that. Or sometimes handwriting gets really sloppy, right? 4 could look like that. I don't really see that anywhere. Maybe, yeah, it's the reverse of that. But that one was always stuck in my mind because I don't see that pattern anywhere in a 4. But it's one of the most important things for the computer to recognize. So it'll break that image or whatever down, image, sound, written word. It'll break it down into different parts and assign each one a weight. Has everybody seen weighted averages before? GPAs are a good example because not all of your classes are worth the same amount. Right? Like a 5 credit hour physics class is worth more than a 1 credit hour welcome to college sort of class. The equivalent grade counts for more. If you get an A in both of them, the A in the physics class is going to count for a lot more. Sales are a good example. Like if you're selling baseball hats and t-shirts, typical average would just add everything up and divide by how many it was. But that's not very accurate because the hats and the t-shirts would have different prices. So we would use the price as a weight. So we'd take like the number of t-shirts and multiply that by the price we were selling each one for, and then add the same thing with the hats. So the number of hats we sold for the average part, but then we multiply it by the amount we were selling it for to give it some sort of, some things are worth more than others, right? Selling things, hats and t-shirts and gold watches. The gold watches are going to count a whole lot more in our average sales than the t-shirt. So we would assign different weight values to those patterns. And then usually there's several layers. I have another one over here. I'll do 4 again. So things feed in, but then they're all interconnected. So they all feed into different ways. And after the first, we apply some weights and another weight. We do a whole bunch of those. And then eventually at the end, we have some sort of output that applies all those weights, and the computer tells us what it thinks it figured out that was. Kind of like showing a picture of a 4, and it looks at all these different patterns, assigns different weights to each one, and takes a guess at what it is. So we have to have a pretty good data set, a fairly decent sized data set. The computer's going to look at a bunch of, well, to go with what's written on the board here, it's going to look at a whole bunch of pictures of where humans have written down the number 4. And then it's going to take a guess at it. At first, it's probably going to get it wrong because it has no idea what it's supposed to be guessing or anything. Somebody seen the videos of like AI learning to play video games? Sometimes they'll have to speed it up because for a long time it just stands there and does nothing because it doesn't figure out takes a long time to even figure out it's supposed to move. So it's just randomly trying things, to a random guess. It knows guessing the number, so it throws out a number. We say, nope, that's wrong, try again. And after so many times of that, every time it tries again, it'll adjust those weights for the weighted average, and that gets better and better and better. Weighted average is very much an understatement. It's thousands and thousands of weighted averages that are all intertwined and connected together. But that's an oversimplification that most people are familiar with. So that's how machine learning works. It's already been invented. So working with this falls in the category of data analytics. We have to set up the data set to train new models, right? We're not going to sit there and say no on every single guess. We needed to look at millions of 4s written out in order to learn to accurately predict it. So we need a data set that knows it's 4, so when the computer takes a guess, it can basically tell itself whether it's right or wrong and get the first few thousand so that its guesses are really accurate. I guess that's one way of thinking about it. It's really, really accurate guessing. This year, the text prompt ones have really taken off in popularity. I meant to do a discussion board and never got on that and never got it added in there. And one of the reasons I like to do it as a discussion board in class is so that I can talk about how to use these tools properly instead of just going in there and randomly guessing things. I've been promoting things like this for a while in the software development courses, because computers are way better than humans at typing. A computer will never make a typo. A computer cannot come up with an algorithm though. So it can write code all day long, but we still need a human to tell it what code to write, what the purpose of the code is, what input that code should grab, and then what should it do for the output, and the computer can fill in the gap in between. The human still has to come up with the algorithm, which is the step-by-step process that the instructions need to come in. I guess, yeah, that's what I say. The computer can type all the instructions, but it has no idea what order those instructions should be placed in. So a human still needs to organize them. Yeah, I'll go to openai.com, ChatGPT. That's probably the most popular one. This is not. I'll get here. Can you Google this number? There are a few things about this. So this, I don't know what this stuff is. I'm gonna take time to read it right now. Okay, yeah. So remember some of my previous questions. It's great for writing code. So if you're making like a payroll system and it needs to be written in Python, and you write a Python employee class for a payroll application. The more detailed prompt you get, the better example of code it's going to get. On this one, there are other ones that are specifically for writing code, so you'll get better code out of them. But it still gives you a really good starting point to refer to. The whole animation there, that word's popping up slowly, that's just an animation to make it look nice. It's a computer. It finished doing that in a couple nanoseconds, so then they just slowed it down and make it look nice on the screen. Make it look like it's coming slowly. They wrote some code, copy and paste that, and maybe do a little bit of editing. You have a really good starting point right there. Or little bits of instructions if you get really detailed about what you want to ask for. We can ask you all kinds of questions. Just bring in the prompt. I don't know, what is the history of the Python programming language? And one of the big things, the reason I like to do it as a discussion board and try different things. Doing multiple prompts can be very, very useful. Like ask it the question and come back and ask it in a different way. And the name of these things are chatbots. It's one of the big things. Keep hearing people talk about, like, who would put in an essay prompt and have it write the whole thing. That's not what chatbots are for. There is a thing called prompt bots. I guess people that are freaking out about that don't know prompt bots exist. If that's what you need, make sure you use a prompt bot, not a chatbot. Chatbots you can get better answers though from, because you can rephrase the question and get a different thing. And like the name chat implies, treat it like a conversation. Ask questions and have some back and forth, and maybe don't just go with what it spits out. After you ask same question 3 or 4 different ways, copy and paste things back together. It's just like the code. With an essay, a human still kind of needs to put it together. So it can write some really good sentences. That's my general thought on these things. Is the next step in the typewriter. I'm going from one key at a time up to like autocorrect and predictive text, where we type a word at a time. And this just types the whole sentence at a time, which is actually the only thing this knows how to do. It knows how to type. It knows what a really good thing should look like. There are some problems though. In order to train it what a really good sentence looks like, they used a lot of social media and plagiarism checkers because social media posts that get a lot of upvotes, but are all written things instead of pictures, probably have some really good words. Right? It's probably a good combination of words. The reason people like to read that. And plagiarism checkers as well. Sentences that get plagiarized a lot are probably really good sentences. They're either really good sentences or something that nobody can figure out what they mean in order to put it in their own words. But it seemed like a good place to look for good sentences. But because of that, this particular one especially learned what a good sentence should look like based off, I guess, arguments on Facebook and plagiarism checkers and examples of where people cheated on their essays. It's a machine, no morals or ethics there. It will lie to you without qualms. All it does is it recognizes a good sentence. So there might be one sentence that's completely factually accurate, but another sentence that it randomly generated is a better sentence. So it's going to go with the better looking sentence, even if it's completely false. It doesn't know what the words mean. It only knows it only knows how to evaluate some sentences are better than others. And it will give you the best looking sentence, whether it's true or false. It also learned to talk from social media. So they did have to kind of hard code. They did have to go back and hard code it to not be a racist anti-vaxxer. Might as well just straightforward say that one. Unfortunately, it has humanity as its only example to learn from. And there's pros and cons there. So they have better bigotry things built in from the beginning on self-declarations. So they're not having to hard code stuff. I guess nobody realized that was going to happen. I guess it might still creep in sometimes too. So always make sure you read it. Don't just put your prompt in there, copy and paste and put it in there. Because they tried to hard code out the bigotry, but it's a very complicated thing going on internally there. So parts that could be missed. So you always want to double check and make sure, like, if it's typing up a script for a speech for you, make sure you preview that speech before you say it in public. Make sure you fact check it because it does not know what the words mean. It just knows what combinations of words look better than other combinations of words. So it will always give you the best looking sentence. ChatGPT is notorious as well for if you ask for citations, it knows what a citation should look like. So it will write out a citation, but it will make up the stuff that goes into it'll make up journal articles and author names and stuff that we put in there. But otherwise, you can write some stuff. The biggest thing is using the tool properly. You want to be aware of its limitations. And well, like the famous one, the one that really shows up a lot, talking about the people plagiarizing their essays. Let's put the prompt in and get a whole essay. If that's what you want to do, use a prompt bot. There is a specific tool for that, and it's not a chat bot. They've actually been around longer than the chat bots in the current generation, but I guess English teachers didn't know they existed. It's a tool, it's not going away. My general thought on it is it's the next step in keyboard, up on a keyboard, right? From single letter presses to autocorrect and predictive text. And now we've got something that can type the whole sentence or the whole line of code for us. We can use that, and just like putting the program together, the computer, I guess there's a lot of similarities there. The computer can type all the instructions probably better than a human can. Typos are a human trait, but it doesn't know what order to put those instructions in. It needs guidance on how to put the instructions together in order to carry out the task you're trying to solve. Because there's not really intelligence in there. And you want to treat essays a similar way. It's a conversation. So this is why I think chatbots are better than prompt bots for doing the whole essay thing. You would still want to come with your thesis statement and an outline. The thesis statement is what makes it an essay, not just random rambling of words. Everything ties back and you're supporting that one main point that you're making. You would still want to do that. And then with the chatbot, you would guide the conversation to a particular thing. So I asked about the history and he went all the way back to the very beginning of Python. Not a very good description. Python was invented because he couldn't get out of a family event, family Christmas reunion. So he made up a work project so he could get out of talking to people and sat in the corner for 3 days with his computer. And by the time he got back to work the next week, he'd realized that he'd accidentally stumbled on a great idea. I really like the story of how Python came about. Most people in most people studying IT seem to be able to relate to that story somehow. But it gave the whole history. So what made Python become so popular? So you'd want to go through a few times and re-enter prompts and refine what it's doing, and then don't necessarily copy and paste the whole thing like an essay. Use those pieces. Just like a keyboard, you type some letters and you hit backspace a few times, type some different letters. It's just like that. That's the way I think of it, only a whole sentence at a time. You just want to make sure you're using it properly, and one of the big things is knowing the drawbacks on these things. You can usually find out the particular one. There's no shortage of blogs and all that stuff on it. I like to put it as this discussion board. That way y'all can do it as a class discussion. Talk about what worked, what didn't work, or they gave you the same answers, things like that. Giving out a long list, and you can get more specific. Can you say what made Python so popular? Just giving a list. And probably get some paragraphs this time, that way it doesn't look. Yeah, so this time it's more, so adding in more and more details. One of the big things there, just give it a few tries. That's a tool that you're going to see, so you want to be familiar with it. That's why I like to require it on at least one assignment in the class. I've been promoting these tools for software development for a while, because writing our code in text, the code is not what, text file is not what runs. That's just a human format, right? We talked about all that binary stuff. There's no text interpreter component in the CPU. It's abstract layers on top of the physical hardware that's doing that. So this is nothing like what really runs in there. That's just for human benefit. We can do it just as well from pictures. There's a lot of those. They're called low code or no code solutions. Low coding, because usually we still edit little pieces along the way. But we drag pictures around with our mouse. It's also a really nice effect on those, because usually we have some graphics there. So when it's running, we can see data flowing through things. It's different pictures that represent what's going on in our code are the one that's currently running. We can actually see zeros and ones, or extend that up to trues and falses and words. Have our actually see our data flow through the program. Makes it a lot easier to work with and stuff. Those are very, very popular. Text has been around for a while. Some people are determined to keep text around, but humans make typos. And I guess it's going to linger for a while, because some people are just absolutely determined to keep it around. But chatbots are better at writing code than humans. Just not better at writing algorithms. And same thing for an essay. They can write sentences better than most people, but maybe not necessarily connect those sentences to the same piece of statement. that tool's around. If you have me in class again, since I forgot that in our class, I will probably make it a point to remember every time for a while. So if you have me in class again, you will definitely see an assignment where we use that. Usually I like to do that. Discussion boards work great for that too, so y'all can discuss like what worked better in a prompt, or which way of asking the question seemed to completely backfire on you, or what got good results, what got really long sentences, what got really short sentences, things like that. It's a tool that's not going away. And if you're heading into ID now, you probably want to be familiar with it because people will ask you questions. So another thing about IT, we have lots of different programs in the School of IT here, right? You all have seen the list. I tried to cover the bulletin board for those who have been in the past. We covered the bulletin board with the completion guides, and we couldn't even make them fit. That's maybe a quarter of the completion guides, if even that many. I have to go through and count. There's a lot of different programs in the School of IT. We have all the specialties. People not in IT don't make that distinction. You could tell somebody you're a cybersecurity expert and they'd be like, oh, you know computers? Can you show me how to crop a picture in Microsoft Word? So if people know that you know about computers, they're going to ask you any computer question they have. There's a lot of crossover in whatever your particular expertise is and other stuff, you'll see it. So it doesn't hurt to have an answer ready for some of that, have some sort of expectation, know where to find answers. That's another very useful one. We're talking about random things. I can't remember if I talked about this earlier in session or not, but with searching stuff, one thing I found that can be incredibly useful. I'll wait for the Zoom pictures to go away, or Zoom buttons to go away. There we go. They were sitting right on top of the thing. When we go search, sometimes we might not be finding the best answers. What's something I can look up? Central American ancient ruins. This probably has something. Maybe we're looking up something like on the Mayan civilization or Olmecs, one that's lived. Not as well known, even though they were considerably larger and more widespread. But when we find something about the Olmec civilization, we're looking here, and everything that's going to pop up is about the Mayans because they're way more fancy, way more famous, especially in the tourist traveling industry, because all of their ruins are, I guess, the equivalent of national parks. Every country calls them something different, but tourist traps. Whereas the Olmec ones are still just sitting in, most of their ruins are still just sitting in the villages these days. They're just at the edge of the village, and unless somebody happens to go there, they're not going to stumble across them. So we might be having trouble finding things. One thing I have found over the years that can be really helpful, follow this, I'll look up Olmec ruins, get something specific going for it. Maybe we're not finding results. Something I found can be really, really useful is to go make a typo on purpose. Because you don't know what's going to happen when there's typo, right? Probably by now you've learned that you don't even have to really spell it correct. As long as you're close enough, Google's going to correct it. If you can't find stuff, I found it can be really helpful to go ahead and spell it wrong on purpose to see what Google tries to correct it to, or get something close, and do a couple of actually pull up that did you mean on purpose a few times to figure out what words you should be searching for that would get good results. That was just a tip I like to give in this class. Most people in this class are near the beginning of your college pathway, so you're gonna be doing. You have a lot of research to come anyway through the courses. So something that might be hopefully be useful. kind of looking at some random things. Over the weekend, last week, we looked at Linux machines. Over the weekend, I was trying some different ones, and I wish I would have done this a week earlier. Uh, I tried this. I tried Mint. Um, I've heard about it before. A lot of people like it. If you're normally a Windows user, used to a user, a Windows machine, this one, after I looked at it, finally got around to looking at Mint. I thought this is probably the easiest one to transition from Windows into Linux when this starts up. Somebody took a lot of effort making them line up. So if you installed VMware on your own computer for that lab last week, this would be a recommendation for something to look into. It's Mint, MINT. The latest, most popular one is Cinnamon. Spun up really quickly there. So I go ahead and make this full screen. Just at a glance, the mouse is a different shape, but just at a glance, that looks a lot more like Windows 10. Okay? So if you're used to Windows 10 or 11, they have a version that's like Windows 11 as well. I start the menu. A Windows user would be immediately comfortable with what to do on this. I've never really looked at it much, so I wish I would have seen it a week earlier. I would have said it last week in class when we were looking at this. That would be a good one to install for the lab. Looking around here, you can see it should look familiar if you're used to using Windows. Somebody took a lot of time to set it up so that our interface is that way, and it's still a Linux machine, so still have the bash terminal to go in, I think bash. Good check. Yes, still have a bash terminal we use to do all our Linux stuff and all of that. I didn't bother to check which one looked at the default, but just a recommendation if you're heading into IT, you're gonna want to be familiar with Linux. I think over half of you have to take at least one Linux class. Linux and virtualization is, what is it? SVAD 111. Some of y'all have that on your required courses to take. You've seen it. I see some head nods here. There's also a lot of reasons why so many computer experts choose to use Linux. And there are some nice advantages to it, especially it gives us complete control over everything, but something to look into. So if you're trying out different Linux machines, definitely check out Mint. It'll be very familiar with what you're looking for. And or if back to that thing a moment ago, the random questions people will ask IT people. If somebody asks you about getting into Linux, that might be a great one to recommend to them. It install, and then you just help them set up VMware and install Mint, and then that would get somebody moving away from Microsoft and start using Linux, and a good introduction to it. We'll talk about Linux. Remember that we also talked about Windows subsystem for Linux on Microsoft machine. That's a really, really useful thing to install that. Let's talk about, remember the hotkeys. So like Windows key and X, it's all of your computer management tools in one spot. And then terminals on there, I usually just hit I to open the terminal. If you just type WSL -- install, that will put Windows subsystem for Linux on your machine. It's already on mine. Where you have some small Linux virtual machines, but they're not separated like the virtual machines we saw in VMware. Those are isolated. We often use the term sandbox. They're closed off from the rest of the computer. These are networked together. So if I open up all Kali one here, I'll pull up the IP address. That's what this is. So the word IPADDR, that's just a key command to get a whole bunch of our internet connection details. There's a lot of stuff there. It's hard to see. We have to dig around through a long list. So IP address, the IP address, and I'm going to use the pipe symbol. That thing above the enter key on your keyboard, the vertical line, that is a pipeline symbol. And a pipeline means we're going to take the output of one thing and send it to the input of something else. So in this case, I'm going to run it through regular expressions, which is pattern matching. So instead of having all this to dig through, I'm going to run that through a pattern match and look for something that a word that I know is right next to all of the IP address I actually want, and get an easier list to dig through. But we have this IP address here, 172.28, got some other stuff. We talked about IP addresses. And we saw this in IP config in the networking lab, I believe. I'm pretty sure that was one I asked about. So down here we see that it thinks it's connected by Ethernet, and there's some 172.28, some other stuff. So the subsystems aren't an isolated version. So unlike the traditional virtual machine, if you mess something up on, you can be on that Linux machine and mess up the Windows machine, or vice versa. They're interconnected. They're fully networked together. So like over here, I can navigate right to that. So if I change directory /MNT, that stands for mount, all the mounted drives. One of them is C drive, or in my case, G drive, because I use Google Drive as the OneDrive. Google Drive doesn't back up configurations that I regularly break my computer, and OneDrive has a automatically backed up or broken configuration. So if I connect to OneDrive, it automatically breaks the computer that I'm on. And it's going to be very, very problematic, and I'm not sure how to go in there and fix it, but I'm not too overly concerned with that, because the only thing on my OneDrive is the automatic backups. It just so happens that the most recent one will automatically break every single computer that connects to OneDrive on that account. So I use Google Drive instead until I figure out how to fix that. Or switch to a different account or something. So I can change into the C drive here, and I'll just go ahead and type through a few. The users, and then this particular user, and you can see all the regular Windows machines. So that's another useful way to get into Linux. That one will be very, very useful as you progress. And keyboard shortcuts that can make it really, really easy to get in there. I often use the File Explorer. So if you're on Windows, remember Windows key and E, I might go over to File Explorer. We can tab around and use arrows and stuff, but there's a lot of tab stops on there. But no matter where our cursor is located, we hit Alt D, that goes to the address bar, which is 2 tabs away from the tree over here. The right and left arrows open up folders. You can go up and down the folders that way. That's a quick way. Or in the address bar, if you know where you want to go, I'll navigate over to the delete folder, go there, and we can enter a lot of terminal commands, but if you expect some output, you won't. There's no place for it to see it. Like it'll pretty briefly flash up there and then disappear. So it'll flash on the screen at like computer speed, so you're not going to read the output. But a lot of the terminal commands, we don't need the output, so we can run those from right here. Or just start our machine. So I can come up here and just type in PowerShell. Let me exit back out of that. I'm not sure where focus is, so I'll hit Control Alt Tab. Come back over here and then just move back and forth between those. Control Alt Tab is the one that pulls that up. There's actually several keyboard shortcuts that pull that up, but they all behave differently, and some of them Some of them will keep it open so that you can navigate between things. There's at least one that just pulls it up and then automatically goes to the next one to the right. So you just have to it just goes one thing over. Control, Alt, and Tab is the one that opens it up and leaves it there so that you can use your arrow keys to get back and forth between them. Like on a Mac OS, that's one of the nicest things I'm using a Mac is being able to switch between applications so quickly. Make sure this has focus, and then up here, instead of opening PowerShell, if you like the old command prompt, which was actually removed, and they got a lot of backlash of it, PowerShell is an update on command prompt. Everything from command prompt still works in PowerShell. So Microsoft thought, okay, that's lived its life. It's been around since the 70s. We don't need that anymore. So they got rid of it. But people don't like change. So they got a lot of backlash on it. So they put it back in, but there should be quote marks around it. They put it back in. It doesn't actually run the computer anymore. All this does is forward a command to PowerShell. It just takes the text and then runs that text in PowerShell in the background. Some people still really like to use it. It was one of the ones written in the 70s, the late 70s, early 80s, when RAM was a precious commodity, so everything's abbreviated, and some things use terminology that we no longer use. Some of the early terms, they're kind of faded away or replaced by something different. There's a lot of them, but since they put it back in, it's probably around to stay now. They're not going to take it out again, but all of the instructions from that will run in PowerShell, but PowerShell will also run more stuff, and we can mix and match the old and new instructions. PowerShell also knows a lot of the basic Linux instructions, and again, we can mix and match them. There's some advantages. Or that WSL, if I go to the address bar and type WSL, actually, let me open PowerShell again. I do WSL -L for list. So here's all of my all of the Windows stuff that's been running right now. I only have a couple of the Dockers running. I've been doing a Kali, and I said Kali is the default one. So if I go over here and just type WSL, that will automatically open the default Kali one. Exit. And learning those keyboard shortcuts will be very, very useful for you in where you're heading IT. There's a lot of them, so it takes a while to learn. I can also maybe open my Ubuntu machine. I just type Ubuntu, and that's going to open one of those WSL machines automatically in the background. Yeah. Make sure you get some practice with those. Try to learn some of the hotkeys because it does take a while to learn all of those. But there's no shortage of lists. Y'all know how to find that stuff, right? Just go over to Google and look for hotkey to open File Explorer. Or the one we just did, Windows key E. Which written down like that's a little bit better because they can actually put the picture there and know what the key is. That happens a lot with the Chromebook. When I'm talking about the hotkeys on a Chromebook, the desktop key on a Chromebook is used a lot, but there's no label on it, so people don't know what it is. So I'm gonna have to come over to the board and be like, that's the button. The button with this picture on it. I have to actually describe it. Chromebook has a couple of those buttons. There's no labels, but they have to actually talk about what the picture is. But way more than 12, but that's a good start. How long is it going to take to learn 12 keyboard shortcuts? You learn 12 a day for a year, and still more to learn. So there's a lot of them out there. Just keep that in mind. That is something that will be very, very useful no matter where you're heading in IT. If you're doing IT support, it's definitely one of the best because then when somebody calls in with their broken computer, you can walk in the room and not even say anything. Just walk in the room, walk over to their computer and just do like one key press and then leave. And so tell everybody to know how awesome their IT department is. It's like they don't have to They didn't have to ask us what's wrong. They just come in and do a key press and leave. Yeah, a couple of minutes. Just one last thing I want to mention, and I'll write the name on the board. Let me write the name of this software up here. Not erase it very well. Customer relationship management. The software. This one I like to talk about. Obviously, that's a mouthful, so we're going to use the acronym CRM. But the words customer relationship management. That sounds like something that would be really useful in business. Most businesses, lots of businesses, all businesses. So on my way to school, that was mentioned in a lot of textbooks. They pretty much never gave any details about it. They didn't really say much more than it existed. Then after school, after the IT pathway through school, I had several pathways through school. I'm still working on doing graduate level mathematics right now, so doing that one class at a time. It takes a long time to get through something one class at a time. But I'm almost finished with it now. It just stretched out for a long time. And then I'll probably do something else. Then I'll probably continue learning just because there's a lot of interesting stuff to know. But on the IT pathway, when I was getting the IT degree from here at Ivy Tech, I came here as a student with no plans whatsoever. I was between jobs and thought, oh, maybe a fourth attempt at college will work out this time, which I guess it did. I'm really, really happy. I like where I ended up. I had no idea I was going to be a teacher at the time or anything. That just kind of showed up along the way. But this kept being mentioned. CRM software, and the textbooks were basically like CRM software is something that exists. Didn't really tell what it did. Sometimes you see the whole name spelled out, customer relationship management. That sounds useful, but not really what it is. Then afterwards, discover that most businesses base every decision the company makes on the CRM software. Salesforce is probably the biggest one. ServiceNow is CRM software that has become immensely popular for the IT department help desk. They use CRM software to submit the help desk tickets. If something's broke, some people use CRM software. It kind of covers everything. Started as sales lead things. And so we need the contact information, all the customers. But if you're a good salesman, just having your customer's phone number is not enough to make that sale, right? You need those other details. You need all of your customers to think of you like a close friend, and salespeople really need to build relationships with their customers. So it's like starts as a contact list, but then stretches out to that. But then it connects to everything else. Then it can tie into our database and tie into different graphic software to put nice dashboards together, and it ties everything together. It's really customer relationship. That's what a business is all around, right? So one way to think about this software is it's essentially everything about a business. It's something that you're going to be familiar with. Your IT textbooks will probably be like my IT textbooks. They'll say it exists. Then you'll get out there and get a job and discover that everything is based off the CRM software, but you never bothered. You didn't know anything about the CRM software because it didn't seem important the way textbooks vaguely mention it. It can be large. One of our degrees here is, we have that here, it's in the informatics program, informatics Salesforce administrators, CP. It's an 18 credit hour degree. So about a year, y'all may have heard we're starting the 4 credit boot camps here. So a lot of people like the boot camp style. So we're going to begin doing that with our 18 credit hour degrees, because 18 credit hours can be done in a semester. It's kind of an intense semester, so it's going to be full time and approach like a boot camp. But then it's our courses, so we don't. When somebody goes through an IT boot camp, we don't have to stop and wonder what transfers in, try to figure out what's what, because they'll be taking the Ivy Tech courses, and it's one of the 18 credit hour degrees. CTs, right now we're calling certifications, but I've heard the name's changing. I'm not sure when the name change goes in effect. Academia moves slow, so we talk about things for years before it actually happens. I believe the name's going to change to something short-term degrees, something like that. It's going to change at some point in the future, but the short degrees, the basic ones, get that knowledge, quickly get back out of the working force. There is one on Salesforce administration. So learning this software or getting started on software is a full degree. And I can tell you that will be a very, very useful one. There are a number of people that I've talked to about teaching courses, and when I mentioned that degree to people that have been like an executive boards and stuff, retired from CIOs and CTOs and CEOs of different companies, and they're bored in retirement. So like, oh, I'm going to teach share knowledge with the future generation. I mentioned Salesforce to them, and they usually get excited about that class. Like, oh yeah, I can show people how to use that. So it's a degree. It's basically a degree to learn this. There are small ones. You can get something to get started on. I just want to make you aware of it, and mostly just point out that sentence I said that when you see that mentioned in a textbook, go do some further research on your own, because customer relationship, that is a description of what every business does in the entire business, right? Summarized in 2 words. So as far as business is concerned, and remember way back at the beginning of the semester, I mentioned the business perspective. We can approach it from our personal IT, from our personal perspective, or from like a large enterprise scale, business side. Businesses have money. So if we want something money, we need to approach it from their side, but also learning with that business perspective in mind. How does this impact the business? The knowledge will filter down to your cell phone. If you can hook up a network for like a 3-story office building filled with cubicles and keep everything running there, you won't have any trouble at all hooking up your home network. But if you know, knowing how to hook up your home network does not qualify you to hook up a network for an entire office building. Right? It flows down much better than it scales up. So keep the business perspective in mind, and this is a big deal there. You can look at some of them. What did I do? I found one like the other day. Oh, I just Googled free CRM software. So that one, like I mentioned in Salesforce, definitely not free. But another thing to think about as a student, free is definitely nicer as a student. Obviously, a bunch of expensive stuff. But remember, after you graduate and when you're out there making really good IT money, the IRS is going to want a great big chunk of that. So you want to have some itemized deductions to put on your tax form. Business expenses. So when you pay for software, if you're in IT and pay for software, that's a business expense, which comes directly off the amount of taxes that you owe to the IRS. So if you're making $120,000 a year, the IRS wants $40,000 of that. If you just have a few business expenses, you'll cut that down from like they want 40,000 to they want 4,000 really, really quickly. So after graduating, expensive software is really, really nice. Remember, that's going to be a business expense. So, and itemized deductions. Here's the one I looked at the other day. So I just Googled free CRM software. That way you can start looking at what some of this is, get an idea of it, and check the Best pre-wins in 2023. There's a long list here. Maybe just to start, you can go in here and kind of look at the pictures, click around, see what they have in there. So engage pay. We just click on this and there's pictures and stuff to look at. Or more. I don't see many pictures on that one. Does everybody know what I'm talking about? If I say dashboard, familiar with that, right? Where all our charts and graphs and buttons show up. So it's more than a user interface by itself. CRM software is usually integrates with a dashboard. Oh, the next picture here shows a nice dashboard. So something like this, we have all the buttons, have the contact list for our software. Which one says Bitrix? This is a good one. For free, you come in here. They probably have lots of pictures. Oh, actually, yeah, they have dashboards, so I can. So for different collaborations, so sync together all of your chats after you come. Some people you can do business with are on Microsoft Teams, some of them on Discord, some of them on Slack, and all those different chat rooms you can sync them together into one place. No, you don't. Makes it a lot easier to keep track of them. Same thing with the different video calling services. Instead of keeping track of different ones, tie them together. So this is fully customizable. It is a common job for software developers to customize CRM software. Your calendar, email, a lot of that stuff you're used to being tied together, so it ties together. So like all the contact information, but more than just the contact on your customer, the leads about your customers, those details about their life, so you can have a conversation. If they call up, you know what's going on in their life, not just more than just like their previous order history. You see the picture, it organizes things better. Route all your online, your payment systems through it, keep track of everything. So start with a contact list and start scaling it up, tie it into your company database, tie it in, go ahead and plug in the other software that you use, put everything together. Everything to manage relationships with your customers. Very, very important software, and it was just glanced over. To-do list stuff, project management stuff, you all can look through this list. Obviously, it's not a requirement in this class, but I would highly recommend taking some time to look at some of that software. Get familiar with CRM software, because it took me by surprise after IT books rarely said more than it exists, and then you get out in the real world and find that most businesses base every decision they make off what the CRM software recommends. It's a critical thing, and having multiple CRMs, like on your resume, saying familiar with CRM software, and then you start listing out a bunch of them, it's going to look really, really good for wherever you apply. Something that shows up just all over the place, so definitely you want to look into that. Just a tip, not a requirement, but I think it'll be useful. Looking into it's obviously going to take time, and time is a precious commodity for everybody. So use that at your discretion, but I think we can probably wrap up with that tip there. There's a little bit of time today, and a spot that should be blocked off for Informatics 109. So now might be a really good time to go ahead and knock out your final exam if you haven't taken that yet. There were no extra questions in the weekly quiz bank. I still haven't got it. When I made the course, I put in just enough questions and still haven't found time to go back and add extra ones. So if you took all the weekly quizzes, you have seen every question in the quiz banks, and the final exam pulls from those. Not every single question, like it pulls 2 questions from chapter 2, 2 questions from chapter 3, and so on. But you would have seen all the questions already. So hopefully that'll go well. If something happens, you need it open back up or whatever, let me know. I will go back through and put points on it just like I did up. Otherwise, that was pretty much what I had for this course. Hopefully you're feeling like you're off on a good foot. remember that, so one of the big things in here was the survey, right? We looked at all the different things. We looked at hardware, software, data, networking, virtualization, all those different pieces, cybersecurity. Do you feel like you're in the right program? Because all of IT pays really well, but happiness is worth a lot. If you just really enjoy what you do, that makes a big difference in the work days and stuff. But hopefully this helped get you off on a good foot into that IT learning pathway. And keep my contact information. I teach more than this class. If you need help, I'm always happy to help. Just reach out to me. Otherwise, y'all have a great little break. And I suppose I'll see some of y'all in the fall.